Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. I'm going to begin a couple of reels that Lloyd has sent in. Lloyd's from Florida. And the first one he sent in, it's, well, it almost looks like a Penn battle, doesn't it? And that's because it was the predecessor to the Battle in the Fierce line. And this is the Penn Sargus. And Lloyd sent me in a reel. He says, I think the handle is stripped on it. Well, in examining it, yeah, we've got some worn threads there. We also have some worn threads in the main gear. And that usually comes because when you go to put it on, it's put on at an angle, and that cross strips the threads, or you over tighten the handle. Both of those can be a cause for the issue at hand. Well, I checked on the MrParts.com website. The handle was available, the gear was available, so we're going to replace both of those and show you how to service this reel. So before I get started, I want to encourage you to subscribe to my channel if you like these kinds of things. And if you do, use that notification button. That's going to let you know when I'm posting videos, and well, you can see if it's one of the videos you would like to watch. The channel covers all kinds of fishing reels. Today we're talking about a reel probably made in the 1910s, and tomorrow it might be a current line, or it may be a very vintage reel. I'm never quite sure what shows up in my shop. They're all fun, they're all learning experiences, and they're all something that you may be interested in. So go ahead and subscribe there. I'm starting by taking off the exterior pieces and parts, and the first one I take off is that bump guard. I want to make sure that that screw comes out. When I take my pieces and parts off, I use a parts tray, and I recommend that you find a system that works for you as you remove your pieces and parts, service the reel, and then of course find those pieces and parts to put them back together again. Well, I'm starting with that bump guard, but I know that I have to come up and deal with the rotor and the removal of that in order to get the reel complete. I just wanted to get this screw out of here because there's a little tag that holds this bump guard in place. And before I go too far, I don't want to lose that bump guard, so we're just going to loosen up the case so that we can get that out. There we go. You can see there's a little hook on the back of that, and if you're not careful, you can break that hook off. And if you break that hook off, well, you're going to need another bump guard. Let's set that off to the side for a moment. I'm going to come up top, and as I mentioned, sometimes you want to take a diagnosis of the reel. Now, this customer said, I think the handle is stripped. It doesn't want the service on it, but you have to go in there to get the main gear out. So I'm going to service it to that extent anyway. All right. This one should... This is interesting because I'm not seeing a seam here. It may just be me and my eyesight. Let's take these off and see if we can get the side cover off without removing the top piece of this. So there's 4 screws. You want to notice those, and the 3 of them are the same, and one of them is different. The one that's hiding under that bump guard is a smaller screw with a flat head, not the rounded pan head here. So just make a note of that so that when you go to reinstall, it's reinstalled properly. Okay, I'll take this one off from down here if we can. And that should release this case. Now before I go and pull that case, I want to make sure that I go ahead and put the other pieces in here. So a lot of times we look at why do reels fail. This is an example of why one of these reels would fail. Okay, in order to get the main gear out, we've got to remove the axle shaft. The axle shaft is held in by a flathead Phillips head screwdriver, so we'll take the time to take that out. Hold that crosswind block with your thumb after you remove the screw. Pull up on the axle shaft. That will remove that. Clean the parts regardless of what the request is here. Put the axle shaft in. Let's get that crosswind block out. Go ahead and clean that up while we're at it. And now we should be able to remove the main gear. With the main gear, of course, this little thing fell out. And even though it's not going to be a full service, I'm not going to remove the rotor or anything. I am going to clean up the inner case where we have this. And the reel overall looks pretty clean. Let's go to our parts then. Fortunately, Penn provides a good amount of parts for the reels that they produce, and they provide them long after the reel is off the market. So as I mentioned, the Sargus, you had the Captiva, among others. And those were removed and replaced by the Fierce and the Battle and the Pursuit, quite probably around 2016-17. Interestingly enough, a lot of the first generation of the Battle shared parts with the Sargus. But regardless, Penn does support these reels, even though it's, well, a decade since those things have pretty much been sold. All right, we're just going to transfer parts per the request. I'm going to put the bearing on the one side here. I'm going to go ahead and remove the bearing on this side, and under that bearing on the main gear there is a shim washer. So that shim washer is going to come off. And you can see the similarities between this reel and the Penn Battle and Fierce reels. Again, we haven't gone up top on this one, but you would find a similar stack here in terms of the anti-reverse clutch and the bearing system in there. We'll simply put some fresh grease onto the pinion gear, some fresh grease onto the back of this crosswind gear, sometimes called an oscillation gear, depending on which manufacturer makes it. And the idea here is that you have a stud that's offset on this. As that stud comes around, it's going to push the axle shaft up or down. When you load your crosswind gear, put the stud on the bottom. It's easier to get the clearance for your crosswind block. Take your lubed up main gear and bearing. And I think probably how to put that bearing in the case first in order to get that behind that oscillation gear. So even though it came out the same way, it probably knocked the oscillation gear off when it was coming out. Now we can put that back in. Make sure all of that is centered. You can give it a turn to make sure that it's all working. Now this reel, much like the Battles and the others, does not have an anti-reverse override. So make sure that you set yourself to the bottom there, because if you don't, and you get this thing stuck, it's very difficult, if not impossible, to get it back out without breaking something. Okay, put the crosswind block in next. Take the axle shaft, a little bit of grease onto that. Bring the axle shaft in, flat side facing forward towards you. Bring it in until you can see the screw hole aligned with the hole in the crosswind block. Bring this back in now. That's your flat-headed screw for the crosswind block. And if I haven't mentioned it already, a good practice is to take pictures along the way. That way, if you get stumped or stalled, well, one of the things you can do is go back and reference the pictures that you took and why it is, what it is, and where it is. Okay, there's a screw that goes in the back here. That's the flat-headed one. So we want to put that in. And while I do, if you have any questions on this reel or any reel, just leave those questions in the comments section. I will try to answer those for you. Put the hook in through the slot in the case. Then we can come back here, take that little screw that holds that bump guard on. We can put that back in. I think I needed a micro driver for this one. I'll tighten that down. Now we can take the 3 case screws. These case screws should have little plastic washers in there that are water seals. So if they didn't come out with your screw, check in the cavity. You should find them there. And it's possible that you may not find them in there. It may be that the reel was serviced in the past and somebody lost those, but you can see it on here that there's a little plastic washer that's transparent, so just make sure you have them on that screw if you have them. Alright, 2 more to go on this. We'll put the spool on, we'll put the new handle on. Let's see what's going on with this reel, see if we've solved it. So one of the things I was saying is that this reel was replaced by the Battle, and that the Battle did share parts. And interestingly enough, on the handle, the original handle is no longer available, but what is available is the handle for the Battle. So they are interchangeable. Okay, once you completed tightening all your screws, give it a spin. Make sure it spins nice and free and easy. This one does. So we've replaced the main gear. That's part 1. Let's go back to that handle that we got now as a replacement. And, well, I think pretty much the only difference, I think, with these is the color of the shaft. Yeah, all right. Very good. Let's put the handle back in. And one of the things I didn't mention, if you're doing a reel like this and you're wondering why it's tight, you may find it's tight when you're putting the case back on. You need to go check the shaft of the main gear here. You may need an additional shim, or if it's tight, you may need to remove a shim washer. Those gears are set at the factory based on the side-to-side play. So if you have an original gear, you're replacing with one, there may be a difference in the tolerance of the or the manufacturer of the gear. So check those shims if you find you're tight. Give it a spin. Turns nice and free and easy. Let's put the spool back on. And, well, Lloyd's got a reel that's ready to go fishing again. Just tighten this up, make sure that that works. Nice and tight. We'll back that off in a moment. And a little bit of squeeze on the seams here with some penetrating oil to just lubricate the bail. Very good. All right. One down, several to go. But that issue with the stripped gear / stripped handle has been repaired. I hope you've enjoyed that. I want to thank you for watching. I also want to thank our first responders, our police, fire, safety, rescue, and everybody who works to keep us out of harm's way. And, well, I want to wish everybody a great day on the water, fast friendships fishing, and, well, fun in the art of reel repair and service. I hope you've learned something. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Have a great day.